and John Dickinson joins us this segment. The great John Dickinson, who is, does an amazing job covering all the teams, Niners, Giants, Warriors. I was just saying to Raph, JD, that, this ain't going to work. I mean, you got the Giants playing well. Steph's doing well. Niners, I guess I don't know if the Niners are doing well right now, but we can't have this much harmony in Bay Area. It's going to kill the radio station if we have this much harmony. I mean, we could need somebody to go on a 4-game losing streak or somebody to, do the wrong thing, because there's a lot of joy right now in Bay Area sports radio.
There definitely is, at least as it relates to the Warriors and the Giants right now. I still feel like the Niners are drawing a lot of fan angst with the way that the offseason has gone and so many question marks. The Brock Purdy deal not done yet. And then so many question marks for the draft, which is, it's funny. The draft is 3 weeks from tomorrow. It's pretty, yeah. It is coming up fast, and it's a pivotal night, round one, obviously, but really the 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and all the picks they have, it's going to be really important, and I think it's important to kind of change the feeling a little bit about this 49ers offseason.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not feeling too good. Barrows had a great piece in The Athletic today with Shanahan, and Shanahan's like, "Hey, man, I'm raring to go. I'm ready to go. We've had a longer offseason than I want," and he's like, he's really fired up about the competition, and there's going to be all kinds of competition, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And Shanahan's like, we want to create that competition everywhere. We haven't had that here for a while, and he hinted at some positions of need. And basically what it sounds like, to sum it up, sounds like they definitely want to, they like that Robert Saleh's here, because Saleh was the guy that helped them build up their defense last go-round. But clearly defensive line, offensive line, but maybe not interior offensive line. It sounds like offensive line-wise, they're looking for a swing tackle. Defensive line, it sounds like they're looking for a lot, right? Maybe 2 or 3 or 4 players. Yeah, interior players for sure. They got rid of both their starting tackles.
But run stuffers, rushers on the interior, rushers on the outside, everything.
You got a resume and you're a D lineman, you should apply. But offensive line, it sounds like maybe just a swing tackle, maybe not a guard or a center. It sounds like linebacker, very high on the list. It sounds like running back is definitely on their list. And it sounds like, even though they need a kicker, it sounds like that's not on the list, that they're probably going to try to go for a veteran to compete with Jake Moody. So running back, linebacker, defensive line in all the spots, and maybe a swing offensive tackle. Is that's what at least it sounded like, if you read the Barrows piece, that Shanahan was saying are their needs going in. Do you think there's others that he didn't discuss?
No, that there may very well be, but I think that checks. Number one, defensive line. We've talked about it a ton. I do think they need to find somebody that can ride with Fred Warner at the linebacker spot, and also maybe be the heir apparent to Fred Warner here as he starts to age. I think anytime you think swing tackle, I think of it as a little higher end than that. I think of it more as somebody who might be a swing tackle or a backup tackle now, but could project to be a starting tackle pretty soon on down the line. So I think you think a swing tackle, sometimes you think, oh, well, that's just a perennial backup type player. He may be initially, but I think the Niners are looking for somebody that pretty quickly, if not this year, by 2026, that I think can be a starter, because Trent Williams isn't getting any younger, although he probably has a couple of years left. And then kicker, I'm not surprised that kicker is not a part of that, or doesn't appear to be part of that. I think once you draft a kicker and spend the draft capital that the 49ers did on Jake Moody, and it has been it is at this point been a tumultuous existence for Moody. To me, you wouldn't go back to that well again anytime soon, when you can always find somebody on a practice squad somewhere or on the street, or a veteran that can come in. And so often kickers that struggle at one destination go on to be pretty good at another. So I think the free agent route or the veteran route is probably the way to go in terms of the competition for Jake Moody.
I was summing it up at the beginning of the hour, just how it seems like Niner fans are in two camps on the Purdy contract. There's the people that are like, yeah, you know what? Pay him market rate. He's our guy. Love Brock. He's going to be the guy. I believe in him. Don't go crazy, but pay him his money and let's get this thing done. Don't drag it out. Make sure he's there for camp and, onward and upward. And then the other side's like, no, God, don't pay this guy. He's unproven. He's got a rag arm. He can't do it and this and that. And God, whatever you do not pay this guy $50 million. Why? Why pay him more than 30? And go pay him that. Offer him 3 years and $100 million. If he says no, go to Aaron Rodgers, go to Mac Jones, go to anybody. What do you think, JD? I mean, the latest Kawakami piece says that Jed York, Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch are all certain that Purdy is their guy, and that any new Purdy deal likely will involve more. This is a pretty interesting little stat here from Tim. He says any new Purdy deal will involve likely more than $120 million in total guarantees. What do you think?
That's been the number. That's been the number. And because I've said it to you a bunch, 120 has been the number that I've said a lot. Like, I think that's in terms of the guarantee number. I know often we talk about the yearly value and all of that. I feel like Jed York in his interview or scrum at the owners' meetings, I guess he did an NFL Network interview in addition to that, but the scrum was making the rounds from Florida the last couple of days. I felt as if Jed was setting the floor a little bit on Brock, and by saying top 10 and top 10 with Shanahan. Well, guess what? Kyle Shanahan's going to be his head coach. So I mean, basically saying he thinks he's a top 10 quarterback. So when you say you think somebody's a top 10 quarterback, that infers top 10 money to me. Now it also does not infer top necessarily 3 or 4 or 5 money, right? It's not necessarily Dak Prescott money. But as far as the guarantees go, I could definitely see maybe a lower, if it is going to, especially if it's going to be a lower AAV. If the AAV is going to be, closer to 50 than say 55, or it's going to be in the high 40s or something like that, then I think the bulk of that is going to be guaranteed. And I think if you start getting into that level, you are going to be talking about $120 million in terms of guarantees. I know a lot of people have said 100 in the high 90s, 100 around there. I've always been of the impression, you can go back and check the tape, that it was going to be more like 120 in terms of total guarantee, which is obviously more important. To me, it's more like a 3 and 120. If you're looking at it in the landscape of how much are you going to pay over 3 years before there's kind of an out. That's how you get to 40 per. Now, obviously, the structure of the deal, it wouldn't be 40 per specifically, but in terms of the guarantees, which is what matter, if you talk about him averaging $40 million per year, again, not for the cap purposes, but for just the sheer money that he's going to be able to take home over, let's say, the next 3 years. Now that's when you start talking about 40 a year, and I think it adds up and makes a lot more sense.
Sorry to pause, JD, but we are indeed checking the tape. No. We would never check the tape on you, JD. We know that that's what you said. It is interesting, though. The Niners need they need help on the defensive front, whether it's at defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker. There's no question. I mean, we're going to be standing there on a hot July day this summer, JD, and they're going to be, trying out new D tackle and D end and linebacker rotations right before our eyes. I mean, it's going to be just like the early days of this regime, where they got a lot of young players in camp, and there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of competition. The other line, though, from this article that I have to get your thoughts on is Tim at one point says the 49ers aren't really aiming for the Super Bowl this season. Even with all their remaining stars, that's unrealistic. They might draft perfectly, pull out a bunch of close finishes, and remain healthy enough to steal 10 or 11 wins. but they absolutely don't match up with the Eagles, Lions, or Commanders right now. It's just reality. I understand. To right now, I guess being the key word, I agree. How could anybody disagree? They have so many. Their defensive line is Nick Bosa, Evan Anderson, and just dudes. I mean, you're going to typically
they
need
still
a
have
lot
one
more than
linebacker. They still have
Right.
one linebacker. I mean, that ain't going to cut it either.
They don't have a core. They've got linebacker. They don't have linebackers. Yeah, so I mean, they have some needs and they have some holes. So I agree. Right now, they don't match up. But I don't know if you went up to Kyle, John, and said, "Are you guys not in the Super Bowl race this year?" I think they would push back hard on that and say that they think that they are. Now, we don't know, right? We don't even know who's on the team yet. But I think I don't feel comfortable saying they're not a Super Bowl team on April 2nd. You know what I mean? They're likely not going to be a Super Bowl team, but let's give them, I don't know, a puncher's chance. What do you think?
I don't think they are right now.
Okay.
And
right.
I feel
not right now, but would you give them a puncher's chance post-draft, or there's no way, how?
I don't think we're going to know until and I don't think this is an unfair assessment either, but I just don't think we're going to know till about halfway through the season. Because at that point, we'll be able to evaluate the players that they selected and how much of an impact that they're actually having. So the puncher's chance to me is that. The puncher's chance is everything goes right and they hit on the draft like that. But no, I think I agree with you that I think they would push back on it. But I also think they'd hem and haw and not double down on it emphatically either. I think, and I think you look at Kyle Shanahan's comments at the meetings there. I think he seems to be reinvigorated by, and again, by lower expectations. Honestly, like by the fact that it isn't necessarily Super Bowl or bust. You can't subtract as many players as the 49ers subtracted off a team that was already 6-11. Now, I get it. They're saying, hey, they were 6-11. They need to be better. They need to spend their money more efficiently. They need to get more bang for their buck, all of those different things. That's fine. I understand that. That's part of the deal when you're sick. But you can't go 6-11 and then come back and then feel like you're a Super Bowl team when you took away from the 6-11 unless you add some players of consequence at all of these different positions that we've listed here during this segment. So that's my feel on Kyle. My feel on Kyle is when he talks about competition and it feeling like 2018 and 2019 a little bit and Salah being back in the fold, it to me, that doesn't mean they don't think they can win 10 games because I think they think that. But you can be a team that thinks you can win 10 games and also be a team that is going to have everything go right to even have a shot at sniffing a Super Bowl type appearance. And we've seen they get in at 10-7 or around there, and we've seen them win multiple playoff games and get to a championship game in a couple of those years. But I think to expect it off the top is different. And I think what the Niners are trying to do is use the changed expectations to freshen, to take this year to kind of freshen the culture and freshen some of the players and freshen the environment after so many years, really three straight for sure of Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah. No, I mean, they should be released from the burden of expectations based on the way free agency went. For sure. And they're kind of in a new window. And if they, could they get to the Super Bowl in the first year of the new window? We just saw the Commanders do it with a rookie quarterback and 20-something odd free agents. So, it can be done, but it's going to take a huge, and they didn't even make the Super Bowl. But, it can be done. You could be a competitive playoff team, especially with a last-place schedule and some good fortune in the draft. But, yeah, it's Tim says he thinks it's more of like a 2 or 3 year type rebuild, and he thinks that's what he sees. He also asks kind of an interesting question here. He says, what happens to all the relationships internally if they can't turn it around in 25? He says, aren't they risking some of the worst possible outcomes by running into this reset and relying on draft choices and cheap players to fill important immediate roles. Can these guys, meaning Jed, John, Parag, Kyle Shanahan, can these guys stick it out together through a reset? I mean, Jed sounds like he fully grasps the whole timeline and sounds very reasonable about what's the expectations are. But what do you think? I mean, you can't go and have the kind of offseason they've had and let that many guys out the door and then hold the regime's feet to the fire as far as outcomes next year, right? On one hand, we're talking about it's unrealistic that they can compete, and then we're saying, well, what happens if they can't turn it around in 2025? Well, aren't we kind of saying, if you're saying they can't compete for a Super Bowl, aren't you kind of saying that they can't turn it completely around in 2025? So what do you think, JD? Is the foursome, the power foursome that run this franchise, is everybody going to be on the same page through the rebuild, or is this thing going to fracture?
Well, you look at, they won 6 games last year. They won 13 a couple of years before that. Can they get back? To me, can you get back to 10? Like if you can get to 10 and be in that mix to be a playoff team, maybe you make it, maybe you don't. But if you can get to 10-7, I think off of last year, given the path that they chose, I think you would feel good about that. So I think those relationships can survive. Now, and I feel like that's the marker line. Like it's like nobody's expecting 13-4. Nobody's expecting even an NFC Championship game. But I do think there's an expectation that you're going to win 10 games and you're going to be in the final week of the year with a chance to make the playoffs. And, and if you get in, you'll have a shot to win a game in the play. Like, to me, that is the X. So if anything that falls short of that, I think for any reason, then I do think people, some of the relationships may be tested at that point, because I don't think anybody with the 49ers is signing up for a 6-11. This is not a full-blown rebuild. This is a soft rebuild at most.
So reload on the fly, looking to win 10. Maybe you're not in the Super Bowl this year, but you're in the playoffs, but you're back in that Super Bowl mix within a year. I think that's their thinking. JD, awesome stuff, man. It's great to wrap with you. Man, the Warriors are an exciting story. I'm looking forward to hearing you talk more about their deep playoff run. But thanks for jumping on Niners Nightly tonight and giving us some perspective.
Yep, appreciate it, Larry. Thank you.